running for Secretary of State, you said that you would bring integrity back to our elections and make it a more honest process again. And I just wanted to hear what you had to say about so far how that's gone and if it's been successful. I know you've had some battles with the Republican legislature in the state, so and how's that gone so far?
Well, the number one goal I had in my administration was to restore trust to elections. And I believe with the record turnout that we had in 2008, that showed people's confidence in the system. And my two measures of success were, did we have long lines on election day, and did we have lawsuits that kept the polls open past the closing time? And the answer was no and no. Can it always be better? Of course it can always be better. But I think Ohioans saw a market improvement. And I know that success shouldn't be dependent upon who the person is in office. So we were able to actually shore up the process and institutionalize many of the reforms that we made. So there was a League of Women Voters lawsuit that we were able to get a consent decree for 6 years to settle. So no matter who's Secretary of State after me, they will have to do things like back up paper ballots and uniform poll worker training. So again, trust in an election is sort of a subjective thing, but I think all in all, people would generally agree it's better.
We're moving towards paper ballots. Is that going to happen?
Many of the counties that are using the touchscreen, which is what seemed to be the favored thing under the Blackwell administration, are discovering with no-fault absentee voting that so many more voters, for instance, in Cuyahoga County, in November, about 42% voted on paper ballots, voted absentee. Now, that already is all paper ballots, but many of the other counties like Franklin are saying we're actually running two election systems. It would be easier if we just went to all paper ballots.
Now, onto the race today. Today, you had some almost good words for Scott Brown in Massachusetts, and how he ran his campaign. Are there lessons to learn from that race in Ohio? Are there lessons to learn from Martha Copley's campaign and Scott Brown's campaign against her?
I think what we saw with Scott Brown, whether you agree with him or not, he was unapologetic about his views. And what people saw was a person who they liked, who they felt was authentic and genuine and real, and who they felt would work hard for them. I do have to mention, I've already been driving a pickup truck around Ohio, but mine has an HRC sticker on the back.
And HRC, that brings us to a good point. And HRC can mean lots of things. I assume in this case you're referring to a human rights campaign.
Yes.
And you're bringing up marriage equality, and you're saying it very openly. As a gay man, I appreciate that. And you wrote about that on the Huffington Post as well. It seems that Fisher did not really raise that up on his website. There's nothing about that. Do you think that that's going to be an issue that's clarified from his campaign?
One of the things you saw was in Massachusetts, if the candidate pulls away from their values and backs off of some of their earlier stances, they start to slide in the polls. And when you look at, and I understand a poll is just a snapshot in time, but I've gone up 9 points in a very conservative, looked at as conservative poll, the Rasmussen poll. Lee's gone down 7, which puts me within the margin of error against Portman, puts him well below the margin of error against Portman. So he didn't come out for marriage equality until after I did. He didn't come out for the Employee Free Choice Act until after I did. That's his choice, but we need more people who are courageous and not afraid to say, this is where I stand, and if you don't agree with me, I'm sorry, but I can explain to you how I got there, and I'll always listen to what you have to say if you have something to add.
Yeah, and I think that's been a real success of this primary, is that we're allowing progressive issues to actually be debated. So thank you for that. And the final question I have is there going to be a debate? I mean, what's that look like? They made a lot of commotion to say this isn't going to be a debate. And, you have to wonder when you're up there explaining the differences, and he seems to be bypassing that, almost pretending as if there isn't a primary in a lot of ways. Are we going to see a debate?
I would love to see a debate. I think it could be done in a very civil fashion where we focus on the issues and not attack each other. Bring it on. I'm ready.
Sure. I mean, we didn't see the many debates hurt Democrats in 2008. So
yeah, there were a lot, and they were great. I mean, it was amazing. That was such a long campaign season in 2008, but people stayed engaged and interested, and it works. It's democracy.
And a final question, and then you can give the final word afterwards. The big concern that some Democratic voters do have about your campaign is concerns over fundraising. Obviously, Lee Fisher's always been a very good fundraiser, and if you get the nomination, your fundraising will, of course, increase. But people still have that concern. How would you speak to that?
Well, this campaign is not about money. It's about people. And look at the difficult economic times we're in. it's incongruous that people would be crowing and bragging about how much money they've raised, because you have to ask yourself, where did the money come from? If it came from special interests because you had to sit in a call room and call for wealthy people and powerful people to give you money, what are you going to owe them when you get there? That's one of the reasons why people are so disillusioned with Congress. They get into the gridlock and the rancor because they're so worried about making sure they keep happy the moneyed interests that put them there. If you can roll up your sleeves and do the hard grassroots work of a real grassroots campaign, then your money is coming from many people who have an investment in your campaign, and you have an investment in them as everyday, ordinary Americans and Ohioans.
So far, as you've pointed out, the money has not been reflected in the poll results that have coming in. So, and the final word from you?
The final word is that I love Ohio. I hope that people will really take the time to look at the differences between the candidates and vote for the candidate that they believe will actually get the job done, who they can trust to carry the trust that they've been given and to do right by Ohio.